Hey, my name's Travis Bull Johnson. I'm running for Congress against Michelle Fishbach.
There's no money in ending war. There's no money in limiting government.
No more.
To me, part of what makes America great are our small businesses, our small farms, and that's what's getting squeezed out by the establishment politicians.
That's why I say, raise cattle and not taxes. Hey, my name's Travis Bull Johnson.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Bull. Welcome to episode 34 of Independent is Power. We're going to tackle a couple of controversial subjects today. The first of which is going to be the shooting death of Garrett Foster by Army Sergeant Daniel Perry. Perry was just now recently found guilty of murder, and you have the governor of Texas basically saying he's going to pardon him. And the second topic we're going to talk about is these leaked classified documents supposedly leaked by Army National Guardsman Jack Teixeira. I say there's going to be some hot issues because these are issues that libertarians are very intertwined within. In the case of the Perry Foster shooting, I mean, Garrett Foster was a well-known libertarian activist in the Dallas area. So he was much loved. And so that really upset a lot of people. On the other flip side of the coin, there's a lot of people who could put themselves in the seat of Perry, putting themselves in that situation, going, "Hey, what would I do?" Without Perry's previous social media and text post, I think this would have been a very hard situation for supporters of the Second Amendment to kind of figure out, hey, what was right and what was wrong in this picture? Was anybody right? Was anybody wrong? In this particular case, however, Sergeant Perry had a history of making social media posts that were very hostile, and actually talked about how you can be in that same exact situation he found himself in and legally kill people. And that kind of led to some feelings of probably premeditation. I mean, they would have to find him guilty of murder. They would have to have been able to prove intent. And I think those social media posts, as well as some text messages, which I guess he sent about 2 weeks prior, which were actually a lot more detailed on how you would get away with this, is probably what put the nails in his coffin. But what I want to talk about is I want to put ourselves in that same situation for a moment without the social media and the text history. Let's assume it's just me or you, and we accidentally drive into a protest location, and the people are already riled up. They're already hot from whatever reason they were protesting, and they start attacking your car. They start pushing on your car, beating on your car, yelling at you. And somebody comes up, and I'm going to use two situations here. Somebody comes up to you at your driver's door at the low ready. People are already hot and yelling and screaming. You don't know this person's intentions. You can't drive forward. You can't drive back, because if you do, you're going to run people over. So you can't really retreat. What do you do? How do you handle that? And the second situation I want to talk about, let's assume the same exact situation, except other than the guy coming toward your door with a rifle at the low ready, let's assume that he has a pistol being held by both hands in a ready position that's aimed at a 45-degree angle. It's not aimed directly at you, but it is in your direction. And as he gets closer, it gets to a point where it could literally be pointed at you, even though he's not aimed at you. Two things I want you to think about in this case. First of all, from the perspective of the person sitting in the car, would you feel threatened? Would you feel that your life is in danger? And if so, would you defend yourself with lethal means? That is a situation that I question, hey, what would I do? And would you be justified in it? Would you be justified in using lethal means to protect yourself in that environment? Now let's flip the script a little bit. Let's say this you're on the protester side. You're there to help provide security. It's Texas. You can open carry. You're at the low ready because you don't know if things are going to pop off somewhere, and you want to be prepared. You see somebody pull into your protest, and in a matter of seconds, you have to make a decision. Is this guy intentionally? Is this an issue? So you go over there and find out what the issue is, and you approach the guy in the vehicle. How are you? Do you think you're being one? Are you legal? Yes. In Texas, you were legal. So, but are you doing what's smart? How is that person going to picture you? Or is he going to picture you as a threat? You're protecting your constitutional rights. You can do that. Yes, by all means. But can then you be pissed off or your family pissed off? And if you get killed in the process because that person in that vehicle took you as a threat. And I'm sorry, if you're out here, you're carrying it low ready, it's a fraction of a second for you to lift that rifle up and take a shot. Same situation we talked about with if somebody was in that situation with a pistol. It's a fraction of a second for them to lift that thing and take a shot. So the uncomfortable conversation we have to have as members who support the Second Amendment wholeheartedly is knowing the difference between can and should. Can you open carry in that situation? Yes. Should you? I mean, that's a decision you're going to have to make on an individual basis, but be aware that if you do open carry and you do take a ready position, or you do or a low and ready, or you do walk around with your pistol in your hand, you're going to be perceived as a threat. And if a reasonable person would view somebody as a reasonable threat to their life, I mean, depending on what state is, you can engage and neutralize that threat. You may not be intending to be a threat. You may intend to be there to protect people, to protect everything. But how are you going to be perceived? Especially in a case like this where we're talking about it, somebody accidentally turned into a protest. Everybody's hot and bothered. That person in that car is already under high stress because their car is being beaten on. They're being yelled at. And then they see somebody approach them with a gun. Could you really blame that person for neutralizing what they see as a threat? Can you blame that person? Would a reasonable person assume that their life is in danger in that situation? And I would say they would. In this particular case where we're talking about Perry and Foster, Perry buried himself with his own social media and text posts by basically saying, hey, this is premeditated. This is potentially premeditated because I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking how I would get away with this. So yes, I absolutely believe the jury made the right call in that situation. But it does really make me stop and think of, hey, let's take out that social media. Let's take out the text messages. Let's just assume that this guy drove in here as an accident. What would be right? What would be wrong? Whose position is defendable? And that's something that I've been spending a lot of time over the last couple of weeks trying to figure out for myself. What I would encourage people is if you're at that type of protest, I mean, and you are carrying, I personally do not like to open carry. And the reason I don't like to open carry is one, if there is a bad guy, he now knows where the threat is. I'd rather him not have any clue that I'm a threat until I have to neutralize a bad guy. And two, especially with long guns, if you're open carrying a long gun and you're in any other position besides sling arms, people are going to see that as an aggressive position. And they may feel that they have to defend themselves. And I really don't want to put myself in a situation where my actions can be misconstrued. I don't want to give somebody a reason to feel that they have to neutralize me if I'm there just to protect people or to exercise my rights. And that's why I've never been a big fan of open carry. I fully support your right to do so. I just don't necessarily think it's the best idea at times, especially in a high situation, a high stress situation like we found with the shooting in Austin. I was really hoping I'd get some comments on this so far, but so far nothing's coming across. So we'll move on to our next subject. The the leaked documents by Jack Taxiera, we're assuming it was by him. He's the one who's being charged. And for those of you who have not been following, basically what's being said is back in the November, December timeframe, some classified documents ended up on a Discord server, primarily for fans of a certain YouTube channel. It wasn't actually, they didn't actually start with the classified documents. They started basically with summaries of these classified documents saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is for your information so you can be prepared. And after about a month or so, the author did not think that his summaries were getting the proper attention. And he complained that he was spending hours putting this stuff together. And what he did so what he started doing at that point is not doing the summaries, but actually posting the classified documents. Now, I think in this is an argument I've been having with my friends who are libertarians, including my good friend Spike Cohen, who I am just completely against on this particular situation. Their situation is not their thought process is nothing should ever be classified. Everything should be out in the open. I look at a lot of the information that was released in this particular case, and a lot of it was tactical. It was expressing, okay, this is the position of the Ukrainian military in this situation. This is where they're at in this situation. It was really stuff that could be used to exploit the Ukrainian positions. They also gave a lot of information that was without context. One of the ones I've been harping on or talking to people about or trying to educate people on is they talk about these 14 boots on the ground that the United States have in Ukraine, 14 special forces members, supposedly, according to this memo. Now, everybody's assuming that these guys are out there shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainians fighting against the Russians. If that was the case, yes, this by all means was something that needs to be leaked. But I've got a unique perspective in it because I have actually worked in the embassy environment with these special forces guys. Special forces guys being assigned to the U.S. Embassy is not an uncommon thing. It happens all the time. These guys are often assigned to the embassy, especially in cases like this where we're doing a lot of transferring of military equipment. These are the guys who are actually doing the logistics, who are actually smoothing all the paths to get this military, one, to get the military equipment to Ukraine, two, to have it inspected and making sure everything is straight with it and it fulfills all the requirements of the contracts. And a lot of times these guys are special forces. Why? Because these are the guys who are often trained in the foreign languages, who are trained in interacting with the local populace. So these guys aren't actually on the ground fighting the Russians. They're out here basically doing the work on the ground that needs to happen to transfer arms and equipment to a foreign nation. And again, I've seen this go on myself when I worked at the U.S. Embassy in Jordan. These guys are likely attached to the United States Embassy, specifically to the Defense Attaché office who oversees these programs. In a country like Ukraine, where we're doing all of this ramping up of transferring military equipment on a relatively short time frame, this infrastructure wasn't there before. Okay, so you need to bring these boots in to be able to help facilitate and make this happen. This is not a case where people are actually on there fighting, but that's with people who don't have the knowledge who don't actually have a context of everything. That's how they're blowing this up. That's how they're justifying, hey, this was a good leak because we're showing that we have boots on the ground. Hell yeah, we have boots on the ground. We have boots on the ground in every country in the world where there is a U.S. embassy. I mean, I think that's every country but two. Okay. So yes, we have a military presence, a defense attaché at the very minimum in every country. So to say that we have boots on the ground and to say that they're fighting the Russians directly in a violation of the War Powers Act of 1973, I believe, is not accurate in the least. But again, that's how people are twisting this information. People are comparing this kid to Snowden. and Snowden basically showed some illegal programs that the United States was doing, and drew that light to him. Snowden, I think, had the correct intent. This kid's intent, and let me rephrase that. This young man's intent, was to look good in front of a bunch of other peers and kids. He wanted to be seen as the big man. Hey, look at all this information I have. Look at all this knowledge I have. I'm powerful. I'm important. That's what was going through this guy's mind when he did this. It was solely to stroke his ego. There was no intent for the greater good. And Spike, my friend said, "Oh, I don't care what his intent was. The information still needs to come out." Well, no, Spike, it doesn't. The other problem I have with this is libertarians are here, and they will like say one of the only reasons for government is to prohibit fraud, is to help the movement of business by ensuring there is not fraud and contracts are honored and so forth. Yet they see no issue with this kid violating his contract not to share private classified information with the world. I mean, to me, that's a lot of hypocrisy. But they say, well, the government don't deserve to be protected. I mean, every contract they do is basically in their best interest. Well, guess what? Every contract anybody signs, the people who sign it think it's in their best interest on both sides. That's why they do the freaking contract. It doesn't mean it should not be honored. These same people would be screaming that you need to be able to hold people account who violate an NDA by giving off trade secrets. That's basically what this kid's basically set off trade secrets, except instead of being on a company level, it was on a nation level. And so many of these libertarians don't believe in nations. They don't believe in government. Then therefore, what this kid should be doing should be encouraged, even though it stands against everything that they believe in. And that's where I've got some issues. And I made a post yesterday, man. Sometimes I don't understand what I was thinking when I thought I was a libertarian, because with their anti-government fervent, I mean, there's a belief of two different standards here. And I don't agree with that. I mean, this kid got a security clearance that probably cost the government hundreds of thousands of dollars to give him. This guy would have kept his, and I keep on saying kid, but again, this guy is 21 years old. We say he can legally own a gun. We say he can legally drink. This is a grown-ass man. This is not a kid. But if this man would have kept his nose clean for a few years, he could have then leveraged that security clearance for a very well-paying gig, especially with his computer background. He could have been making huge money. So this was not a one-sided deal. Like, who gets the best benefit here? Okay, so yeah, I have some issues with that. I mean, I think this guy needs to be punished. I think everybody up in this chain of command needs to be held accountable, because to get access to classified information, you need two things. You need the clearance, and you have the need to know. Why did this kid have the need to know everything that he spread? Where was the checks and balances on this? Okay, this has to do with his command, how the way they operate. I mean, this guy, I believe, was an E3. I mean, lower enlisted. Where was his supervision? Where was his sergeants? Okay, there's a lot of questions here who still need to be addressed. So, but I just have this hard issue with understanding libertarians. I mean, when I reacted to Spike's comment on this the other day, yesterday, I knew I was going to get ratioed. Okay, that's just a thing. I mean, you have so many true believers who follow Spike, and they're great people, but they will defend him to the end of the earth. So I knew by questioning Spike's opinion on this that I was in for ridicule. I was in to get hit. I did the same thing on Twitter the other day with one post where somebody was talking about the same thing, and I basically said the same thing. Hey, this guy is not Snowden. There's a big difference between leaking classified information, tactical information, compared to leaking illegal things that the government is doing. And And of course, again, the same thing. I mean, the people who follow this guy is very, very fervent, and I knew I was going to catch it on every angle. And normally I like to go back and debate and fight with these guys on issues like this, but I cut my losses on that one because there's no way these people were ever going to be convinced that they weren't right and that this guy was a hero. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, at this point, I think if this guy walked into a libertarian convention anywhere in the United States, there would probably be a line of people on their knees to service his manhood, so to speak. Uh, that's how much they're into this thing, and I don't understand it. I mean, it's one of those reasons why I felt I had to start a new party. I had to start the Constitutional Republic Party because there was not that understanding of betrayal to a country. To so much of the libertarians think that you should have no loyalty towards your country because they don't think you should have governments. So many of them are anarchists, and so this idea of actually being faithful to a country, being faithful to a principle which country is based on, even if it doesn't always live up to those principles, is a foreign concept to them that they just can't seem to grasp. And I, on the other hand, can't seem to grasp the opinion of not having that feeling, not having that that patriotism, and that's again one of the reasons why I felt I had to leave the Libertarian Party is it just didn't represent me as a person. And again, we spoke about this on other podcasts a couple of years ago. That was one of my first big arguments with a gentleman. Had to do with a lot with that, and with him calling the government, the United States as a whole, a murder cult. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on these two subjects. Does anybody, meanwhile, have any questions or any comments? I mean, it's an open floor. Ask me anything, and I'll do my best to answer for you. And I'll go through a couple of my little comments here so far. Daniel, he committed treason. You may not like me saying it. We've certainly misstepped the war on terror. The spying on our own people is scary. The whole thing stinks. He blew the whistle on some disgusting things our government is doing, so he's essentially forgiven by many. My own view soft, and that doesn't mean that it wasn't a crime. And I'm assuming Daniel here is talking about Snowden. I mean, because I really think with this 21-year-old guys that could be put on the same footing, and Daniel, I came a long way when Snowden first came up, as well as Assange, excuse me. My first thoughts, and again, at this time I was a young man in the military, deployed overseas. My whole concept at that point was, man, this is treason. They need to hang these guys. These people need to be dead. And I've kind of matured in my thought process along the way as I got more information. I do put Snowden in a different category because if you don't have people who's willing to make that jump, who's willing to do what they think is right, even though it may be deemed illegal by the people in power because it protects the people in power. If we're not going to have some type of, where's our checks and balances? Okay, we need people like Snowden who will come up, and when they see stuff like this, they will make sure everybody sees what's going on, especially when it's illegal and it breaks the law. And there were so many things that came out with these classified documents that showed the United States government was violating their own laws. So I don't really know if I would say he committed treason. At the time, I fully believed he did. I mean, at the time, again, because at that point, I guess my patriotic feelings overruled my sense of what's wrong and what's right and checks and balances. As I've gotten older, I've started realizing more and more the importance of these checks and balances on our system and how we count on everyday people to help maintain them, because the government as they have proven, will not do it themselves. I mean, and it comes the same way when we start talking about classified documents. I mean, there's so much that when I was working in that environment that there was really no reason for some documents to be classified, but they were classified at the topmost level. And it's like, okay, this is definitely overclassification. There is no reason for that. And looking at, of course, a couple of my other comments. Yeah, I mean, Daniel, I really appreciate your chiming in here. You agree? It doesn't mean there aren't consequences for breaking the laws. But I think as individuals, we do have to stand up for what we think is right. I mean, that was a big reason for my show today. Honestly, and it's hard for me because so much of my backing, so much of my followers, so many of the people who believe in me politically are libertarians. And for me to have to come out here and take a stand on two issues that very much have all the libertarians all really up in arms right now. I mean, because Garrett Foster was really a loved guy by a lot of people. So when you start saying, hey, you know what, he may have contributed to this by approaching this guy in a hostile environment at low ready, people automatically want to say, well, you're victim blaming. Well, you know, in a way we are, okay, because if we don't address what causes these accidents or these instances to happen because we're scared of victim blaming, we'll never stop them. I was so frustrated with this when I was a leader in the military and I had to talk to my soldiers before the weekend. And especially for the young lady, I'll say, hey, you know what? Control your alcohol intake. Okay, don't put yourself in a position to be a statistic. Well, then I had people get on me saying, hey, well, you're blaming them if something happens when it's the guy who is an aggressor. Yeah, but you know what? We know better. We should know better than to put ourselves in these positions. Okay, when we put ourselves in these positions, we have to take some responsibility. And right now, the thought process is a victim never carries any responsibility for the situation in which they found themselves in. And I don't agree with that. I mean, yes, the blame should not be on them, but we do have to figure out, hey, what caused this and what responsibility was there? Should this, just again, we said earlier, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, because sometimes when you do something just because you can, you put yourself in that dangerous situation. All right, we got a comment here from Scott. It's a tough place how the two parties have the ultimate control. When anyone fights, the wrong party benefits from the loss of votes to the Republican Party. You know what, and Scott, I think it goes both ways. I mean, right now, I don't see there is two parties. There's a left wing of the Uniparty and a right wing of the Uniparty, but at the end of the day, they're the same party whose only control is to make sure those two wings stay in control. We've seen it with the effort to raise the standard for ballot access here in Minnesota to 10%. You had the chair of both parties supporting this measure. Now, thankfully, most of the rank and file on the GOP side, and at least one of the DFL members that came back and said, no, this isn't right. But at the same time, you had the leaders of both of those parties trying their best to eliminate third parties from the ballot. So, I mean, it's stuff that we need to address and we need to do something about. But until we all make that commitment, it's not going to happen. I mean, the government counts on having a majority believing that the two-party system is the only option. As long as the majority of Americans believe that, it's going to be real hard to change that. And they are, let's face it, they are very good at messaging and brainwashing. I mean, they've had 200 years to learn how to do it. But all right, guys. So I'm looking through my comments. If I don't have any more comments or questions, we're going to go ahead and we're right at 30 minutes, which is about the time I like to try to keep these shows at, to keep your attention. But hey, thank y'all for tuning in. We'll hopefully have some good conversations come next week. As we get here start moving into summer, there is a chance we will reschedule the show for an evening time slot, just so I can get more done along the farm on the weekends when it is the best opportunity, because I got the most hands on the ground. So be prepared for that. And for any changes that may occur on that, it's not happening yet, but it will be coming probably within the next 30 days or so. So thanks, everybody. Remember, independent is power, and that power is in your hands. Have a great day. And
Travis Bull Johnson. I'm running for Congress against Michelle Fishbach.
there's no money in ending war. There's no money in limiting government. To me, part of what makes America great are our small businesses, our small farms, and that's what's getting squeezed out by the establishment politicians.
That's why I say, raise cattle and not taxes. And my name's Travis Bull Johnson.